All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll just get started. Here we go. So we're presenting the research roundtable today, plus a live Q&A from two Ariel members. We appreciate everyone coming, and this is basically just going to be an informational session on major selection, which is coming up pretty soon for first years. A little bit about like the Linguistics and Languages Department and its majors and its minor, as well as stuff about Ariel and its research, and again a Q&A at the end. So just a little bit about linguistics and language programs. So we have two specific full major programs within the department. So there's linguistics, which is basically just a concentration of the scientific study of language, which includes phonology, phonetics, morphology, syntax, and semantics, among other things. And then cognitive science of language is a program that mixes the study of cognitive science, which is an area of psychology, and linguistics. So you'll see some of those specific areas of linguistics within that, as well as the more cognitive side of it. And then the Department of Linguistics of Languages also has a minor, which is in linguistics, and we'll be talking about that in a second. All right, so in order to choose your major, if you want to do a honors linguistics or honors cognitive science of language major, which are both a Bachelor of Arts, there is slightly different requirements for the two. These are things that you should probably have done by now, but basically these are what they are. So for honors linguistics, you have to have completion of any level 1 program, a GPA of at least 5.0 as of this year for in Linguist 1A03 and 1AA3, which are the two intro linguistics courses, and then a recommended what's it called? A recommendation that they have is not required to get in though, is to have 6 units, so 2 courses of a language other than English in your level 1 program. And then for cognitive science of language, there's the requirement of completion of any level 1 program with a GPA of at least 5.0, and then a GPA of at least 5.0 in either Linguist 1A03, Linguist 1AA03 and AA3. So again, the 2 intro ling courses, and then again, a GPA of at least 5.0 in Psych 1F03 or 1X03. 1F03 is like the online version, and then 1X03 is the mostly in-person version. So they're same course, you just have to take one of the two. As for declaring your major, so basically the way that the major selection process works is that you will rank your top 4 courses, or top 4 choices. So you'll research your majors, you can choose whatever you want depending on if you actually meet the requirements. And you'll rate your top 4 choices. So we wait until major selection time, which this year is going to be starting Monday, April 3rd. All right, so yeah, major selection time this year opens Monday, April 3rd at 9 a.m. and it'll close Saturday, April 29th at 11:59 p.m. And basically the way that you'll actually choose your major and like select it, you'll go through Mosaic into your student center. There's a spot called My Academics. And then there is a spot called Program and Plan Application. And there you'll rate your up to top 4 program choices, number 1 being your top one and 4th being your last. Something important about this to keep in mind when you are ordering your choices is that, and this is especially something to keep in mind if you're looking into programs that have like limited enrollment, which is not something which is to be worried about with linguistics or cognitive science of language, but when you're ordering them, if you're admitted to your first one, the system won't actually like evaluate your the following choices because it'll just accept you into the first one. So if you're not accepted to your first one, then they'll be evaluated in descending order. So you need to make sure that's in an order that you're actually okay with. And yeah, that's it for majors. So as for minors, so minors typically consist of 24 units from a subject area other than your own major. And usually it is a maximum of 6 units from level 1. And they are available for students who are enrolled in 4 or 5 level programs, with the exception of individuals in medical radiation sciences. And yeah, so the Department of Linguistics and Languages only has 1 minor, so we don't have a cognitive science one, but we have one in linguistics. So it consists of a total, at least the description for this year is that it's a total of 24 units, 6 of which are in the 2 courses, the 2 intro-ling courses, so 1A03 and 1AA3. And then 18 units will be from courses within level 2 and level 3 linguistics. This can change depending on the year, but this hasn't changed in a bit, but if you're watching this at a later date, just take a look on the academic calendar because it will have information for that as well as the majors. And yeah, in order to declare a minor, so it takes place in your final year of studies. This is all done on Mosaic again. So you complete the minor certification application, which is again found on Mosaic. And then you complete the Graduation Information Center or GIC application, which is also found on Mosaic. And if the faculty verifies that your requirements have been met, your transcript will indicate that the minor has been obtained. If you are taking something, for example, like a psych minor and you're in cognitive science of language, there is a lot of like overlap between the courses that you take. So you'd have to check with like planning services just to make sure that you have enough credits to declare your minor and also have enough for your major if they are overlapping, just because they don't allow you to declare all, like if you have one course and you're trying to declare for both your minor and your major, sometimes that might not work. But yeah, so once approved, minors can't be revoked. So once you already have it and you go through the process of getting it, then it's on your transcript. And yeah, so that's all for major and minor selection. If you guys have any questions, we can talk about them later, or you can send any questions to the McMaster Linguistics Society Instagram or on our Discord if you have any other questions. But we're going to talk a little bit about the Ariel Research Center and research in general. So Ariel is, it stands for, well, it's a Center of Advanced Research in Experimental and Applied Linguistics, and it's a research center used by McMaster's Department of Linguistics and Languages. And it contains a wide variety of research labs spanning many areas of linguistics. So what is research and why is it important? Kind of a simple question, but just to go into it more in a like lens of linguistics, it's a collection and analysis of information to test a hypothesis and reach specific conclusions. And this can be done in the form of research projects, case studies, surveys, and much more. Some of the benefits that it'll have, it provides you some valuable experience desired by many graduate programs and future employers. It helps you foster connections with the professionals of the field. And it's an enjoyable and hands-on way to enrich learning, since linguistics, especially in Cog Sci, a lot of the courses can be very theoretical. So it's good to have a view of actually applying your knowledge. And it's just crucial, again, to the understanding the field of linguistics. So who runs the labs at Ariel? So professors within the Department of Linguistics and Languages are, for the most part, those who run the lab, but there also is McMaster professors who are associated with other departments and faculties, including psychology, neuroscience, and behavior, the MELD diploma program, and other ones. And there's also a couple labs which are run or at least co-ran by professors from other universities and institutions outside of McMaster. And this is just a list of the current Ariel labs. We have these ones here. So there's the Imaging, Physics, and Engineering and Imaging Research Center. That's one. There's a Language, Memory, and Brain Lab, the MELD Research Lab, the Neurotechnology and Neuroplasticity Lab, the Phonetics Lab, the Reading Lab, the Sonodara Lab, the Syntax Lab, and the Terpstra Lab. Those are all the current ones at Ariel. And as for getting involved with Ariel, we'll have our volunteers here speak a little bit as to how they got involved in just a second, but just some general things. Taking linguist courses, which are geared towards research experience in areas essential for doing linguistics, such as research methods, which is a requirement for both linguistics and Cog Sci, will be really good to start with that. Participating in experiments through SONA, those are always, at least the ones for the Ling department, they're run through Ariel, so it's a good way to kind of see like different areas that are being researched. Connecting with professors, joining their research lab, and keeping an eye out for openings on the Ariel website. There's a volunteer section on there. And again, just volunteering in general, whether that's reaching out to the professors or trying to find something on the website. And as for some more research related courses, so there's an individual research practicum course, which is Linguist 3 RP3. And this is a course geared towards providing students with hands-on research skills, where students will join a faculty member's research project. There is a prerequisite for this course, which is Linguist 2 DO3, which is a research methods course for second year. And this is typically only allowed for students who are in linguistics or cognitive science of language who are in level 3 or 4. And then there's also laboratory courses, so Linguist 4EL3 and Linguist 4NN3. There's also computing and programming courses, which are Linguist 4DO3 and 4PL3. And then independent thesis, study and thesis courses, Linguist 4, I believe it's II3, and Linguist 4YO6. So that's a 2-semester course, the one with a 6 at the end. But yeah, we do have a lab requirement. I'm actually not too sure for linguistics, but cognitive science has a requirement of doing some sort of lab credits. So these are some of the courses that can fulfill that requirement. As for connecting with profs more specifically, going to their office hours is a really great way to connect with them, talk about their research, talk about just their interests and whatnot. Showing interest in their research publications and interest is a really good way to connect with them, just because that's what they're constantly working on other than teaching. And asking questions not only about their research, but about themselves, how they got into it is really good, because we also need to consider the fact that they are people, and we kind of are always very monotonous when we're within office hours and whatnot. So it's really good to, like, connect with them in that way, and then slowly you can start building a relationship with them. And yeah, one last thing I want to talk about before we get into our question and answer session is the USRA, which is the Undergraduate Student Research Awards. So it's basically a currently, this is kind of changing right now just because the minimum wage stuff is changing. I was checking on the website, but it's about $7,500 of an award, which is meant to cover 15 weeks of full-time student-initiated research. And basically what it consists of is research-based employment, which is completed during the summer with a faculty member. And yeah, as for applying for the USRA, this is the link that has all the information for the humanities specific one. However, if you're looking into applying for this research like award or grant in other departments, there is other ones for other departments. It's approximately the same amount of money, but it is a different application process, and it has a different due date and everything. I believe the due date for the humanities one has already passed, so this would be something to look for next year. But this website has all the information on there. It's basically just filling out some forms. You have to contact a prof, and there's a couple other things that are specific to the research that you would want to be doing. So that's for the USRA. And yeah, so we'll get into our Q&A session. Today we have two speakers. Both of them are RAs in the reading lab. So we have Brianna and we have Alexandra. And yeah, they're both also MLS AC academic committee members. So, and I'm also in Ariel as well. My name is Amelia, and I didn't introduce myself at the start, but I'm working in the phonetics lab as well. So we have a couple questions already pre-made, some that were asked in the MLS Instagram. So I'll ask a couple of those first, but if you guys have any questions and you want to leave them in the comments, they can ask that too. And yeah, so if you guys just want to do a short introduction on yourselves and how you guys got into the labs, you can go ahead. I think we can start with Brianna if you want.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Brianna. I'm finishing my second year in cognitive science. I am an RA in the reading lab with Dr. Victor Cooperman, who a lot of you, if you're in first year, will see in your second year at least, because he is responsible for teaching research methods, and sometimes he is involved with like other courses, but in past years, not so much recently. But I basically have been in the lab since January of this year, so not too long, but yeah, I basically just weaseled my way in by talking to Dr. Cooperman and just trying to network a little bit through him, ask him about his research, and yeah, just kind of connecting with him that way. And that's kind of what I've been up to. So
Thank you, Brianna. All right, Alex, if you want to do your short introduction, we can get to questions.
It's pretty much the same. I'm Alexandra. I've also been in the reading lab since January. I went up to him in class a couple of times, asked him about it, and then he reached out when he had openings in his lab for RAs.
Yay. All right. And yeah, I'll talk about my experience because it was a little bit different than them. So I am under Dr. Poppet in the phonetics lab. And the way that I got involved, I've been in it for much less time. It's currently the end of March, and I joined basically at the start of March, so it's barely even been a month. But I basically just I'm currently taking his Linguist 3 FO3 class, which is the anatomy class for linguistics. And I basically just went to his office hours and talked to him about his research and asked him about what openings he had. So I'm currently volunteering under a master's student he has there. So yeah, my experience is a little bit different, just through office hours and kind of building a relationship with him through class. But yeah, so we'll get into some questions. If you guys have an answer, you can go ahead and speak up. But if you're not sure, then I'll just pick one of you guys. So we'll go into some more general academic questions first. Why did you choose your degree?
Okay, I guess I can start on this one. I since like high school, I was super interested in like learning languages and whatnot. Um, and initially I wanted to go into translation, um, but I kind of stumbled across cognitive science like by accident, and I realized that it was so much more like geared towards my actual interests, like the whole like psychological aspect of language learning, language production, um, other topics like that, everything that is covered in this degree. And I like kind of realized then that I was like, okay, this is a better fit. Yeah, like just honestly being interested in like language learning and the concept of it was a motivator.
Alex, do you have anything to add or?
Yeah, I got interested in a different way through high school. I was more interested in like biochemistry, and then eventually I was interested in kinesiology. I thought maybe nursing for a little bit, but then I decided I didn't want to do that, and I was thinking occupational therapy. Then I started volunteering at a um like a recreational program that mainly works with individuals with special needs. And I would talk to a lot of them. I was there for 3 years, so I got close with a lot of them. And a lot of them, I heard how like meaningful and impactful speech therapy was for them. So I got interested in that because I thought it was really cool, and it was cool to see how much it impacts us. And then I found out about linguistics because my high school was very STEM focused and not as much in social sciences and humanities. And then I looked into places to apply. I mostly applied to like kin programs, but then I applied like to McMaster for this, and I decided to go with it. So now I'm here, I guess.
Yay. Yeah, mine was pretty similar to you guys. I guess I was kind of just very interested in doing SLP from when I was younger, just because I'd seen my sisters do it. But I originally actually applied for Ling because I had no idea cognitive science existed, because if I'm not mistaken, there isn't really any other cognitive science of language programs unless I'm like sorely
There's
mistaken.
like
So
one at
yeah, right.
UOT. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had applied to linguistics for everything, and then once I came here and then I started taking psych courses, and I realized that there was a cognitive science and language program, which made more sense for me wanting to go into SLP. So that's that. Yeah, so this is another general academics questions. What are your favorite courses that are like linguistics related or cognitive science and language requirements?
I'll go. I have strong feelings. Not really. I just really prefer psych-based stuff like psycholinguistics and some of the psych courses I've taken. And I really, really like stats.
That's that's a rare answer. But,
Yeah.
can't say I agree on the stats part, but I did really enjoy programming. This past year they offered 3 PG3, which is an introduction to programming for linguistics. Unfortunately, it's not running next year. But if it runs in the future, I definitely recommend taking it. I also have really enjoyed like phonology and phonetics. Yeah, it's kind of been fun.
Awesome. All right. We'll get into this is more so relating to RA stuff, but it still kind of has to do with your academics. I'll probably have more so of an answer for this, but in what ways have you used theoretical concepts that you've learned in your classes in being an RA? You guys don't have a response for this. I can say something because I know mine is more related.
I mean, I kind of think that like, especially like in the reading lab, like Dr. Cooperman loves R. And I think that like understanding like statistical analysis is really important. A lot of stuff that was covered in research methods, he actually does use. Unfortunately, I did need to pay attention in that class. Um, yeah, just a lot of like statistics and stuff, very relevant. Um, experimental techniques, ethics, all that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is more so the theoretical concepts that you learn if you take psycholinguistics, which you don't like need to take. So you might not encounter it, but that's probably the theoretical concepts that we use most in the reading lab.
Yeah. Good answers. For me in phonetics lab, I have definitely used stuff that I've learned in my phonetics class. First thing I went and doing was using Pratt, which is basically just an analysis like application to analyze audio waves of like speech sounds. So yeah, there's been information about stuff. Mostly what I'm doing analysis of right now has to do with fundamental frequency, pitch, just like syllable duration, and just in general using Pratt as an app as a total. So we got an introduction to that in our phonetics class, and just general like phonetics principles having to do with like articulation and whatnot. That's definitely been a bunch of theoretical stuff that I have used that I learned in my phonetics class that I'm using as an RA in the phonetics lab, as well as knowledge that I've gotten in a course that I'm currently taking, again, the anatomy linguist 3F03 class. A lot of stuff having to do with phonation and articulation has just been really important to understanding what I'm actually analyzing in the lab. So yeah, that kind of stuff has been good. And then just in general stuff from research methods, just doing having to do with ethics and how labs or how studies are run has been stuff that has been relevant to that. So yeah. Okay, we just got an extra question about academics. Is there anything in any of your classes that you wish you could have studied more in depth? Good question.
I feel like for the most part, there's a lot of content like that has deeper layers, but I feel like what we go over like in second year is a healthy amount of things that I honestly think will be covered in later years just because it's too complex of a theory. But I'm really, really interested in stuff like the phonological representation of of lexical items, or of like underlying form and surface form items, and how they kind of transfer between one another. But I feel like that might have been too complex for this year. So other than that, like I feel like it was all pretty like standard level.
Insufficient, yeah.
Yeah.
Alex, do you have anything to add or no?
Maybe a bit more research methods. I mean,
Yeah,
I've as much work as you can do it, like the modules are online, which I find is harder for me to really focus on.
yeah.
But other than that, like everything's been good. Everything that
Yeah,
they
I
do in the
think
labs is things that have happened in class. And I mean, even in the lab, like they don't expect you to know everything. So if you have a question and you ask, they will explain it to you.
yeah, that's pretty important. I think my only, not complaint, but something that I wish could be studied more was Pratt, but honestly, that wasn't at the fault of the class. That was because we had a TA strike happening when we were there. So a lot of our teaching time got cut off. But other than that, yeah, I feel like another good thing, just in the fact that we do kind of have a lot of base level things, again, just because we are in second year, is just the fact that we're able to then realize what we're interested in and what we want to learn more. So I think Brianna was talking about the fact that she's interested in some phonological concepts that we haven't learned fully in depth. So she already knows that that's something that she wants to continue to, go with. So I think that's a good thing. It also helps you open new doors for what you want to research or what you want to look into, what you want to learn, whether it is within your classes or externally.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get into more specific RA questions right now. You guys can kind of like share this question, I guess, because you guys have very similar ones. But in general, what responsibilities do you have as being an RA for the reading lab at the moment?
For the two of us, it's pretty different than I know from Emmy's. Bria and I kind of work on a couple, like on different projects. We aren't really on one set thing. We kind of do whatever needs to be done, like verifying data, kind of like not really analyzing things, but reading through things, making sure they seem correct, giving input on like graduate students' projects and stuff like that. So we kind of do different things each week. And then we have our experiment that we run.
Yeah.
Which
And then I
Bria
guess
wants to
just
talk about
that you
one more.
guys also just attend the meetings weekly too,
Yeah,
right?
weekly
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah. For me, just because I joined late, again, I'm working under the phonetics lab, but I'm more so working under a master's student at the moment. So basically what I'm just doing, like I said, is just analysis on Pratt and just annotations on Pratt. So basically just like marking down when different speech sounds happens, when there's different like stresses and whatnot. and just specific information that the master's student is requiring for their study. And then I'm not attending meetings just because I joined late, but that would regularly be a requirement for RAs under the phonetics lab. And then just any other things that are being asked of me. Like we ran a phonetics and phonology conference over the past weekend. So I was helping out volunteering with that. But yeah, basically just like statistical analysis, which is not very intense. So it's not, don't be intimidated because it's just basically range and average and stuff like that. But it can be time consuming depending on what you're doing. So that's definitely something that you need to factor in when you are considering doing research. Do you guys have any advice for networking with researchers and profs?
Definitely, like, don't be afraid of them. I know so many people that are like, I would like to reach out, but I'm intimidated by my prof or too nervous. Yeah. I'm sure that we kind of all feel that way at the beginning, but seriously, like you said, they're human. They're very approachable for the most part. I would say just reach out early and be polite, obviously. But like I think one of the most important aspects of reaching out is to be genuine about it, because copying their website or their research word for word in your um outreach is not going to really seem favorable. But like, don't be afraid of them. Go reach out early. Do it even if you're scared, you know.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so this is kind of independent, but what interests you about the lab that you're working in? Why were you choosing that one over another one? And then, I don't know, just in general, what kind of studies do you think interest you, the different concepts that they study? What really do you gravitate towards?
Personally for me, I know that a lot of it came from past research that Dr. Cooperman and some of the students in the lab had done previously regarding like emotionality in text. I find that super, super interesting. I love the whole concept of the relationship between emotion, mental health, overall emotionality of words, and how that can be conveyed between speakers in the mental lexicon. And whatnot. But after joining the reading lab, I also kind of realized that the reading lab is it works very much for more than just results. It works for, I want to say, like the greater good of society. Like we've done a lot of projects with just the general population, all with intention of improving something or being like supporting something, supporting a population. Um, so I really like that aspect of it, that we're working for people and not just for numbers. But
For me, one of the main interests that I have is computational linguistics and psycholinguistics, which are two of the biggest areas that the reading lab looks at. So it just kind of felt like it would be a good fit. I'm also really interested in word learning, which goes along with reading, and context, how we understand things that might happen in the sentence before we get to reading it based on what we've previously read, which is a huge area of research in the reading lab.
Yeah, cool. For me, obviously it's very different because it's a very different lab, but for me, I feel like I've always been like very like SLP based, so obviously phonetics is very related to that. So I've always kind of been interested in that, whether it has to do with like articulation or just like the manner of producing sound, or having to do more so with my background. So I am a native speaker of Spanish, so being able to see differences within language learning, coming from learning English as an L2, no matter like where you come from, seeing those individual differences that can occur in your L1 and your L2 because of learning potential new languages has always been super interesting. And phonetics also focuses a lot on those individual differences that you can have in your prosody, in just your production and whatnot. So I find that really interesting. And yeah, just in general, as well as that, seeing how language production can change within individuals who have impediments and whatnot, and seeing the actual analytical part of like the phonetic differences that such a person will produce. That stuff has always been very interesting to me, so I like doing that. And yeah, I guess this is kind of a little bit related to kind of everything else that we're talking about. How do we get research experience in the field of SLP? I guess that's kind of just related to like I'll kind of say something briefly unless you guys have any other points. I feel like it's like kind of each lab for the most part will somehow have a relation to SLP, just because SLP can be related to a lot of things, whether it's sociolinguistic or you're getting into the phonetics or you're getting into reading like the reading lab does. But really just working in aerial in general, I think would be good to like get yourself involved into more of the world of SLP. I don't know if you guys have anything else to say on that.
I mean, yeah, all the labs are pretty related. Literacy is an area in SLP, but the biggest two, if you really, really want to do something, if you're planning on like doing research, if you want to do a thesis or something like that, probably the phonetics lab is a good one. Obviously, phonetics to do a speech production would be probably the most related.
Yeah, I think like if we're looking like aerial is the internal like resource for research and whatnot. Additionally, you could always apply externally. If you're really interested in shadowing or other clinical experiences outside of McMaster, there are always private clinics that you can reach out to. They're often taking students, especially those in the area of the university, because they know that we need the experience. So they're often very welcoming of students. Just reaching out to independent private clinics or Hamilton Health Sciences often takes students in as well. So if you're looking for an external opportunity, those are some places you might want to start.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, sometimes just because there is, if you're specifically looking into SLP or something to do with communication sciences, there is a lot of people, especially in Cog Sci, who are interested in that. So unfortunately, although there is a lot of clinics and whatnot, there isn't always a lot of spaces within the lab for research, or if we're looking at volunteer externally. So if you are struggling to find volunteer, sometimes it's good to find something. If you can't find something specific, kind of weasel your way to something somewhat related, and then that'll hopefully get it, because I know a lot of people get stressed during their first year if they feel like they haven't found something and it's so early on, but I do understand the stress. So I started out volunteering within things that had to do with individuals with special needs, and now I'm working towards finding volunteer work that is specifically related to SLP. So if you feel like you're not gonna be able to find something specific to SLP, at least in your first years, and you're stressed about that, don't just do nothing. Find something else, and you'll just add onto your resume, and then that'll make it easier later on to apply to such volunteer positions, I would say.
One more thing is to don't forget about remote SLP. Telehealth is a growing market, so there's a lot of speech therapy happening online. I think a lot of people really just look for private practice clinics, but there are a lot of SLPs who practice online over Zoom, things like this.
Yeah, agreed. Especially during COVID, I think a lot of people switched to online, so there definitely is a lot more opportunities. So that is a really good point. Yeah, I guess this stuff is more, we'll kind of go on to a different topic right now, talking about career and future pursuits. Some of these are more specific to you guys, and then others are more just like in general about Cog Sci and Ling. So do you guys have any ideas about what specifically you are wanting to do in the future? I know that's a tough question since we're only in second year.
I think going into this year, I was really set on SLP, but I think the more I learn about research, the more I consider also applying to masters in linguistics or cognitive science as well.
Fair enough. Yeah. I've always had like cognitive science as a whole on my radar. I have quite a few things that I've considered. SLP is just one of them. Translation, computational linguistics, working with like AI or speech programming applications or whatnot. Also neuroscience. There are some neuroscience programs that you can, both as a master's and as an MD, that you can take from a cognitive science degree. So those are all things on my radar. I have no specific particular interest right now or any which way that I'm leaning, but options.
Yeah, I think we're also in second year, so it's kind of a hard question. And even if we were in fourth year and applying to stuff, I think some of us would still not be 100% sure, and that's okay because we're young. But yeah, for me, I would say for the most part, my like main focus is SLP. But kind of like as a backup, I do want to take courses in TSL, so teaching English as a second language, and potentially looking into things to do with like translations and whatnot, because I have family members who work within that. But I'd probably gear myself more so if I don't do SLP, would probably have to do with like translation services, or not translation services, teaching English as a second language, whether that be in Canada or abroad would probably be what I would be looking into. But currently goal is SLP. So considering we have spoken about SLP a lot, what are other jobs that you guys have heard like through your degree and just like through other sources that are related to linguistics and cognitive science of language that are not SLP and communication science related?
Yeah,
I think the biggest one that I see is working with language learning apps, using research that you can conduct out of the university and working in internships and eventually a job with language learning apps is a big one.
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of open things opening up in like the technology aspect of language learning, programming, all that kind of thing. There's also a lot of stuff in like the like government positions, so like diplomats who study abroad or work abroad to translate documents, all types of interpretation and translation jobs, teaching jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess another thing that I would like to add is that thankfully a lot of the things that we do learn in our degrees are pretty good transferable skills. So things just like simple, if you end up taking this degree and then it ends up being something that you're realizing that you're like not sure if you're exactly wanting to do work within like linguistics and languages, we do have a lot of transferable skills, which would be things that you would be able to use to find jobs in other kind of things, whether it be like in communications or like literally any degree. There's a lot of stuff like, again, relating to research. Just because you take research methods, you learn like basic research related things. You could go into psych related things. If you're in cog sci, you'd probably be able to cater yourself towards that direction if it was something that you're interested in, or just like a lot of the skills that we gain that you might not realize that you're getting during the degree are things that might not be necessarily a focus in others. And yeah, kind of going back to SLP, I think one of the things that we always talk about in SLP, which I know I kind of said not to talk about SLP, but I do want to just like emphasize this. I think one of the like main like misconceptions I guess people have always about SLP is like you work in SLP, you're going to work in a private clinic. But the field of SLP itself is growing a lot more with the fact that there is how to explain this, just like medical advancements in general. There's people surviving, especially like premature like babies and whatnot are surviving at a higher rate, or for example if there's injuries and diseases and whatnot that people might have in their like middle and or later stages of life, people are surviving more just because of medical advancements. So with that comes a lot of opportunity for speech impediments and difficulties. So with that, there's obviously an increase of need for SLPs, but there's also an increase of need of SLPs who do not just work in schools and clinics. There's also things like feeding studies and like swallow studies, people who can work in hospitals, or and gearing yourself more so towards working with like PTs and OTs for again having to do with swallowing, but so many other fields. A lot of work within autism services is a big one. And yeah, so there's like, even if you like go into SLP, you end up doing that, there isn't just like the restriction of having to work within a clinic. You can find a lot of things within that degree as well. But yeah.
I have
Hopefully
one more
that-
thing about like general linguistics too. I feel like a lot of people in linguistics at the end of their degree, I was actually listening to some people talking about this today. They're like, what am I going to do after? I think it's important to recognize that there is a lot of overlap with things. I mean, Dr. Colarusso, his main thing is like anthro, and he teaches historical linguistics. I know companies like TELUS and Bell also hire linguists. There's a need for them in a lot of companies. So
yeah, that's a really good point.
always those career paths as well.
Yeah, honestly, just the fact that you're getting a post-secondary education is already really helpful. And even if you don't end up doing something that's 100% related to it, you still got your degree. So it is something that's there. I kind of have one other question here prepped, unless anybody else has anything else. One second. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is something that's kind of been a conversation more so recently, just because of the way that some of our courses are kind of changing with like the addition of R into more courses. Do you guys have any like feelings about this incorporation of R into courses in like current and future courses? I know Alex probably likes it, but I don't know. What opinions do you guys have?
Yeah, I mean, I took the programming course last semester, and that was the first time I had been introduced to R. And did I hate it at first? Yes, absolutely I did, because it's coding, it's not easy. But once you sit down and really practice with it, play around with it, for a while, like even like Alex can probably testify to this, that at the beginning of the semester, she was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, like blah, 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 as everybody starts, right? But the more you work with it, I find that it's very efficient. It's saves us so much time and effort in the long run. It can do so much for you. And I think it's a really, really good skill to have just in general, because the syntax of R can be transferable to other coding languages. And then, as we just mentioned about transferable skills, it applies in so many fields. No matter where you're going, it can be used in so many different ways. So really important.
I love R. I was a little overwhelmed with it at the beginning of the semester. I never like disliked it, but I was like, this is a lot at once. I was like, I'm not in science. Let me just do my humanities. But I really found there's like a lot of reward when it finally works. And especially if you talk to your profs, you'll learn that there's so many uses for it. I mean, literally in Brianna and I's first lab meeting, R was brought up on screen. A lot of our professors, like if you talk to them about the research, they'll tell you how much R helps them in their research. I've heard some people be like, well, why do we use R and not like Python or some other like more like popular, I guess, in like not data science programs? But for our purposes, R is really powerful. Companies like Google also use R for their data processing, which I think is a testament to R, because a lot of people are like, what's R? It's not as good as Python. It's very good. It's a very useful skill for a lot of jobs to have. And it is kind of fun once you figure it out.
Yeah.
I feel like R is really good for data science and specific. I don't know, like it has a lot of computational power, and like it is very, very narrowed into like data analysis and statistical analysis. So like it's not a frequently heard of coding software, but the good thing is that even I was discussing this with our professor, is that R is so similar to Python that you can basically do anything you learn in R and shift it around a little bit and it'll work in Python. So while you're learning R, you're actually kind of learning Python at the same time. They generally have different purposes, but if you wanted to go and use Python for a different project, honestly, it wouldn't take that much effort. You already have the skills. So it's more than just, you know, R, it's those skills that you're going to be able to take with you into other formats.
Yeah, I agree with you guys, what you guys are saying, other than liking R, because I am not the biggest fan of it.
Not everybody
Um,
is, but
Not everybody is, and that's completely valid. Yeah, it's not my favorite just because I've never liked that kind of stuff, but I also do realize, like, number one, how much time it can save you, especially when, like, in, I guess, the research like, wow, I really can speak, the research, like, context. It just does have a lot of, like, if let's say you're using like a lot of like data points, it would be so much easier to do it through R or some programming language rather than, you know, doing it by hand, as that can be very time consuming and you're very prone to human error because we all are stupid in all reality. So I do realize obviously the like the intent of teaching us and like why it would be important. And I think just by integrating it into new courses, just like talk about that potentially happening in some of our courses, I think it is good, just because even though if you hate it, you'll realize that it is a skill that you're going to end up like being able to use, whether it is actually using R or just using like the skills that you learned through R, or just like kind of, because a lot of R is obviously statistical analysis, right? So if you're kind of using that sort of like statistical concepts in other courses, I think it just helps you to also like continue to practice those skills that you would otherwise have just left in your statistics class, because a lot of people typically will just take courses just to take them and then kind of let that leave their mind, which isn't always the best mentality, but I think we all fall kind of victim to that. So I think it is kind of important to be able to follow up on those skills and then graduate ending up actually being proficient in these kinds of things. And yeah, I think that's all the questions we have right now. Do you guys have any like general advice that you want to give before we end off the Q&A session?
I think
kind of
explore
sprung that.
everything you think you might be interested in. If you think you might be interested in it, give it a try. You may as well. We are lucky enough to be at a school where they do have a lot of different research areas happening. And all the profs are so nice and they get so excited to help people learn and explore these things. So even if you think you might like it, give it a shot.
yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And don't be afraid of them, because it's literally the most sinking feeling in the world, knowing that you had an opportunity and you didn't go for it because you were nervous or scared or didn't think you were good enough. Because trust me, like, I think all of us at some point have felt imposter syndrome a little bit and been like, oh, I don't know if I am good enough for that. But tons of people have made it through and will continue to. So just do it. Literally, like, I guarantee you that it'll turn out well for you. So don't be afraid of them.
Yeah, good advice. I think my only other thing I have to say on top of that is go to office hours for your profs.
Go to office hours.
It helps, whether it's actually getting research positions and stuff, or just like building a relationship with your profs, or just like garnering like deeper understanding of the concepts you're doing. I think it's really important to go and just get that second level of like understanding of whatever concepts you're doing, especially if it's something you don't understand, but even if it's also something that you do feel like you understand, because just having that second level of like, oftentimes you feel like lectures can be very intimidating. So going in and having that one-on-one conversation with someone can be really helpful, and they just want to help. That's why they have their office hours. They want you to learn your stuff. So I think it's very important to go into that. So yeah, if we don't have anything else to say, I just have one more thing to announce after this. Thank you guys for participating. I really appreciate it. I guess this is also having to do with you guys, but we have, or not we, I guess you guys mostly, the academic committee has made their WUG survival guide, which is basically just a guide for your journey in linguistics and cognitive science of language. The academic committee has been working very hard on this, I believe, for like the entire academic year, right? Yeah, you guys have been working on this for a while. So it basically is just going to have information for chapters, which are highlighting information about research, some of the stuff that we talked about today, and some more information. academic topics, professional topics, and extracurricular topics. And it'll all be split off, and that'll be available online. It'll be posted probably on the Discord as well as on the Linktree on April 30th of, wow, I saw 2023 and I was shocked for a second. I was like, that's not this year. It is this year. But yeah, I appreciate the academic community doing that. So if you guys have any other questions that are either not going to be answered in that, if they end up arising by the time that the survival guide gets posted, or if you have any questions that weren't answered today and either you're too intimidated to ask or it arises later, you guys are always free to ask us on the Discord, ask us on the Instagram, comment on our posts, DM us, whatever you want. Or if you want to specifically reach out to some of us, we are all pretty active on the Discord. So we are willing to answer questions whenever you want.
I left
And
my Instagram for you. DM me.
yes, we are not scary, I promise.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to Brianna and Alex for participating and spreading your knowledge. And I wish everybody who has to do their major selection the best of luck, and hopefully get into the programs that you're wanting to get into, and are just able to reach your goals and whatnot throughout your academic journey at Mac. And yeah. Bye.
Thank you.